Today we're gonna create some playful and relaxing art pieces with some oil pastels. I know, I just said recently that I don't usually like oil pastels. I just find them kind of impractical, but I'm feeling a bit more experimental this week, so let's just head right in. As you can see, I am using oil pastels from Paul Rubens, but I assume you can use any brands here. And I have this square piece of paper that I'm taping onto my table just so it doesn't move away. And then I am sketching out a very rough sketch of a landscape that I want to draw first. I think a landscape is a good choice for a first piece, but I'm showing you a variety of ideas in this video. So if landscapes aren't your thing, then just stay tuned. But otherwise, this one might be really fun. I really like this one in particular. And you can see I'm using these same colors in lots of spaces throughout the piece. And that just helps it look more a little bit more cohesive. And I'm also using a blending stump to blend all of these together. I find these blending stumps really useful. I have ones from Stettler, and I think probably any type of blending tool like that will be helpful. You can also just blend the oil pastels with each other if you press down hard enough. I just find that the blending stump makes it a little bit easier because then I can push the pigment into the paper more easily, and afterwards I can layer on top of that more easily because I don't have as much pigment on the paper yet. I'm building up my colors in several sections, and this is by no means a step-by-step tutorial. I'm just showing you an idea for a landscape here, and you can definitely change out that landscape a little bit. You can, for example, use the same color palette as I did, just get inspired by that, and then you can change it up and maybe switch around the trees or something if you want to, or you can pause at any point and just copy the piece just as I created it here. But I really liked the fact here that I'm using a square and that I tape the borders off, because afterwards that's going to give us a very cute and clean look. And I am just going over and over again, repeating the process of drawing with the oil pastels, blending that out with the blending stump, and then just rinse and repeat that. And at first you can see by now almost all of the paper is no longer visible. So at first I just colored everything in. And then I'm going to use some more oil pastels in different colors, and I am layering on top of that to give all of that definition. And so you can see, for example, now I'm using a yellow, and I'm also going to use a purple and some pink tones, and I am creating some flowers on top. And in some spots it's easier to layer than in others. If I have a spot where I've already put down a lot of pigment, then it is a little bit harder to put the pastel on top. And if there's not as much pigment, then it's a bit easier. So this is worth experimenting with, and also maybe experimenting with different papers. I went for something that is in between smooth and rough. So this is my favorite watercolor paper that I used here, which is the Agave watercolor paper by Hahnemühle. And I find that watercolor paper for some reason works really well with oil pastels. And since I have a lot of watercolor paper lying around here, I just use that. And I am doing the same technique of just doing some dots on the trees and then on the flowers and the foreground elements of some grass and stuff, and just basically pressing my oil pastel really hard to get a lot of pigment on top of the other pigment. And that way I'm building this top layer and I am creating more detail and more depth, and that makes the piece look a lot more interesting, and that just finishes it up in a way. and I definitely recommend playing around with them. And maybe if you're not extremely happy with what you created, maybe try it again in a different way and just play around and experiment, because oil pastels might take a few tries to get used to them, but in the end, it's definitely worth it. And I think it's so satisfying to see the tape peeled here. So this is the first piece, and I gotta admit, this started out really well. I am really happy with that one. So I guess let's do another one. So now I want to do something that is a little bit more on the abstract side. So something where you can do it in a variety of ways and recreate it in any type of color. I'm just building this base layer here, and I'm spreading a bunch of different colors around, and then I'm also using my blending stump and just going over that, and it looks so satisfying to see it all blended. Close up you can see all of the crumbles, and then they disappear when I go over them, which is so fun, and part of the reason why these are so fun to use. And now I'm doing the same thing as I did with the first one, where I press down a little bit harder to get some more pigment on top. And I'm just doodling a few plants and dots. And I don't know if I'm happy with this here. This is probably my least favorite of this video. It's just, I don't know where it went wrong. I don't know if it's the color palette or if it looks a bit sloppy. But honestly, it's not too bad, and I debated redoing it and not showing this in the video, but I want to show you the stuff that I'm not extremely happy with as well, because I don't want you to believe that every single art piece that I create is something that I'm extremely happy with, and not every single art piece that I create is exactly like I intended it to. So some pieces are nicer than others in my opinion, and maybe somebody's gonna like this one and get inspired by it. I think I overdid it a little bit with the purple dots, but oh well, it is what it is. I decided to show it to you anyways. With this one, I just don't know how to feel about it. Let me know in the comments down below whether this one is something you like or not. But let's do another one that is a little bit more realistic. And for this one here, again, using the tape, this is just so helpful. And then I am sketching something again, and this is the most complicated one in this video, and I recommend just look up pictures of fruits if you're interested in doing something like this. It is quite hard to get super detailed with oil pastels, and it's not something that I want to do. I want to play around with them and have them look playful, so I'm not adding an insane amount of details here. But I think that when you do fruits or vegetables, it's very forgiving. So even if you don't copy it perfectly, it's gonna look a lot nicer than if you try a portrait, for example. So if you're more of a beginner or you want something that is more relaxed, I definitely recommend trying fruits and vegetables. This has always been one of my favorite things to draw because it is just so much easier and so much more low pressure. I don't even know if I want to call it drawing or painting when I'm using oil pastels. Let me know in the comments down below what you would call this. And also a little side note here, because I am still trying to learn how to seal oil pastel pieces so they don't rub off anymore. I bought this spray fixative that you're supposed to use on top of them, and I tried this, and also somebody messaged me on Instagram saying that you can heat the piece up a little bit with a heating tool and then it won't smudge as much anymore. So I tried that, and I also tried the fixative, and both worked somewhat. So it doesn't rub off as much anymore, but it still does so a little bit. And I did spray the pieces multiple times. So if you have any suggestions for that, please let me know. This one looks kind of yummy in a way. I'm really happy with the colors, and I think fruits and vegetables are always a good choice, especially if it's a medium that is a little bit more on the messy side. Let me know in the comments down below which of these was your favorite, and watch this video next.